Good evening. Good evening, all. I warmly welcome you to the fourth technical session on open educational resources and tools for high-quality teaching learning. Let me commence by introducing the resource person for this technical session. Sri Gurumurthy Kashinathan is the founder, member, and director of IT for Change, Bangalore since 2008. IT for Change is an NGO that aims for a society in which digital technologies contribute to human rights, social justice, and equity. Sir has around 32 years experience across development, government, academic, and corporate sectors. With regard to field programs, Sir has co-designed and transacted blended and online courses, global MOOC for mathematics teachers in collaboration with Commonwealth of Learning, Canada, and has also led a project on OpenStreet GIS mapping in Mysore with support from UNESCO. In accordance with research, Sir has led many research studies on ICT across India. He's also been a part of the Azim Premji Foundation, where his expertise has enabled him to design and implement a variety of education sector studies and capacity building programs. To top it all, Sir has extensively written research articles, research reports, curriculum and syllabi, policy briefs, and position papers. We are indeed exhilarated to have such an eminent scholar amidst us today. On behalf of everyone, I warmly welcome you, sir, and request you to take over the session.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is my voice audible?
Yes, sir.
I want to share screen. I have some slides to show. So I'll just, can I take on share screen?
Yes, sir. We've made you the co-host, sir.
Yeah. Just give me a minute.
Sure, sir.
Sorry, I'm not able to find my, yeah. Are you able to see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So thank you for that warm introduction. And I'm going to spend the next hour or so talking about the topic assigned to me today, which is free and open digital technologies. So there are two kinds of free and open digital technologies. One is what we call as free and open source software. And the second is what we call as open education resources. And I'm going to try and explain how these are very relevant to the educational purposes for which we are, that's our basic profession. And I'll try to bring the connection between these technologies and education per se. Okay, at any point in time, if anybody has a question, you can, I'm not able to see the chat, but if you can maybe type in the chat, then the facilitator can just raise it to me. And anyway, we'll have hopefully some time towards the end of the session. So in the previous session, there was a lot of discussion about teaching, learning, and education and NEP. And one thing we all know is that essentially education is about the sharing of knowledge, and not only sharing, also application of knowledge. But for this process, the most important thing is that knowledge should be free to share. And if you see the slide, it talks about various inventions that instead of patenting it, we made it available to the entire humanity. Because of that, we could make sure that polio is eradicated from many countries of the world, including India. The contrast to the polio vaccine is the COVID vaccine. Although thousands and hundreds of thousands of people died, still the companies that created that vaccine were unwilling to make that vaccine available for free distribution. They wanted to keep the patent on that vaccine. And because of that, many countries which have produced that vaccine and given to its citizens and maybe saved them from death were not able to do so. So we can see how the sharing of knowledge is a matter of life and death. And in the education space, our primary duty is the sharing of knowledge. And therefore, we are in a fortunate space. But although education is about sharing of knowledge, the technologies that we use, they are not necessarily amenable to this logic. In fact, the popular applications that many of us are familiar with, which is maybe Microsoft Windows or Microsoft Office, these are not free to share. You will know that if you have 20 computers in your college lab, you need to buy 20 licenses of Microsoft Office and Microsoft Windows. And tomorrow, when your lab, you acquire the 21st computer, you need to buy one more license. So just because you're already paid for 20 licenses doesn't mean that you can install it on the 21st system. This is because Microsoft keeps a proprietary control on the software and does not allow its free sharing. But if education is about sharing, then it means that we must find software that we can freely share. Thankfully, there is something called FOSS. I think you can see it on the screen. FOSS stands for free and open source software. And this software is something that we can freely share. So in India, too, free and open source software is being widely used. So for example, from the year 2002, the Kerala state of India has been using free and open source software in all its schools. And now it's starting to do the same thing in colleges also. So I had been to Trivandrum last month, and I was talking to the officer who's in charge of digital technology implementation education, Mr. Anwar Sadat, and he said that higher education has been more difficult because engineering colleges, they use all kinds of proprietary tools which are not possible to share. But Kerala is taking the pioneering step of using free and open source in higher education also. But uh, many of the applications that you all will be using in your colleges, typically, operating system, office and all, for all of them, there are free and open source equivalent tools. Now, the word free has two meanings. One meaning is muft, free of cost. We are not talking about that because let's say you're using Google Maps or you're using Google Translate. They're free of cost. You're using Gmail is free of cost. But Gmail is not free software because you cannot take that software, you cannot do whatever you want to do with it. Google owns that software and only Google can decide what the software can be done with. So software that you can own, software that you can share, software you can study, that is called free software. And therefore by free we don't mean muft, we mean swatantra or azad. It's like saying India became free in 1947. It doesn't mean that India became free of cost, but it means India achieved independence or freedom. And that is the word. When we say free and open source software, that is what we precisely mean. Even the government of India has encouraged free and open source software. In 2012, NCRT came out with a policy, an ICT education policy for India, and in which they recommended free and open source software. But unfortunately, like many other policies in this country, this policy is not widely known and widely propagated. But we may find that in the last several years, more and more states are following Kerala's example, and more states are using free and open source software. This is more true in the government school space. In the private institutions where many of you may come from, private institutions still use proprietary software, and that is why I'm happy that I'm taking this session, because any of your institutions, if you want to stop using proprietary software, you can take our help in migrating to free and open source software. And the benefit of it is not simply that it is free of cost because you can freely share it, but there are a lot of pedagogical benefits also. So this slide talks about the various free and open source software applications that are available to us. Is a slide visible now which says LibreOffice, Firefox browser? I'm not able to see the screen, so I'm just wanting to check that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for example, we use MS Office, but there is LibreOffice already available. We use Google Chrome. Now, when you use Google Chrome, you must know that any proprietary software also collects data from us. So Google Chrome, when you log into Google Chrome, it is collecting your data. It is using that data for commercial purposes. So if you do Google search and you're looking for, let's say, tickets to travel from one place to another, immediately you'll get advertisements from travel agencies, you'll get advertisements for hotels, you'll get advertisements for various things. That is because Google is reading your data and giving you advertisements on that basis. This kind of stealing the data of ours can also cause a lot of political issues, in the sense that some of you might have heard of this Disha, who was a student in Bangalore fighting for environmental rights. And one day the Delhi police just came to Bangalore, arrested her and took her back to Delhi, saying that she was working on a Google Doc which had some toolkit for creating trouble. So how did they get access to the Google Doc? Because Google gave them access to the document. So whenever you're using proprietary software, the data doesn't belong to you. The data can be taken away from you. The data about you can be misused by the company for its own purposes, which can be political or commercial. Whereas instead of using Google search, you are used to, if you use a search engine like DuckDuckGo, you can see that on the slide. I use the software search engine DuckDuckGo. I use the browser Firefox. I use LibreOffice, and I use Ubuntu Linux operating system. Because of all this, the software does not take away my data, and I protect my privacy and my safety as well. But more than Microsoft Office or LibreOffice, which is Office applications, the bigger power of free and open source software is that there are hundreds of educational applications which can be used to make teaching much more interesting and much more lively. And you can see on the screen, there are hundreds of FOSS educational applications available. I will do demo of few of them in the session today. There is something called Geogebra, which is used for teaching mathematics. There is something called FET for science, and there is something called Stellarium also for science physics. There is TuxMath, there is Calcium. I've just given 4 or 5 names here, but there are hundreds of software applications which are relevant for different subjects. Not only these are relevant at a school education level, these are also relevant for colleges. Now, BSc mathematics, when you're looking at PU or the degree mathematics, there are topics which are possible to teach using the software GeoGebra. And likewise, these software FET has got several experiments which are relevant for higher levels of education as well. And therefore, if we migrate to free and open source platform, your teachers in your institutions can have access to several tools which they can use for teaching different subjects. Not only they can use software for teaching, they can also make their own resources. So it may be difficult for a college to afford video editing software for all the teachers, because proprietary video editing software from Apple might cost 60,000-70,000 per license. But instead of that, you can use a free and open source software called Kden Live to edit your own videos. We use the video editing software Kden Live for making the videos that we want to use in our own work. Similarly, for making audio lessons, or you want to make audio podcast. So many colleges may be also creating podcasts of different lessons that students can listen to in their leisure. There is a software application called Audacity, with which you can use, which we can use to create audio resources. Yeah. I'm going to now start. So these are some examples of the resources that I shared. But before that, if there are any questions anybody has got so far, maybe I can take a question or so, and then we can continue. Anybody has any question?
As of now, sir, there are no questions in the chat box.
Okay. Fine. So then let me continue. What I will do now is I will do a demo of a few software applications. But before that, on the slide, if you see, we are all using the Zoom software for interacting in this session. Zoom is also a proprietary software. What do we mean by proprietary software? Proprietary software means it is owned by the company. They just allow you to use the software. So Zoom allows us to use the software for the purpose of video conferencing. But you are logged into Zoom. The Zoom can listen to your audio, Zoom can listen to the conversations, Zoom can take a recording of that and use it for commercial purposes. We have no way of ensuring that Zoom cannot take away the recording of the session and use it for its own purposes. We may think that this particular session, even if Zoom takes it away, it is of no problem. That is true, because this is a really a public discussion and we are not saying anything that we want to hide from anybody. But supposing you had some sensitive conversations, then that would make you vulnerable if you use a proprietary platform. So at IT for Change, we don't use Zoom. We use a software platform called Big Blue Button. You can see that on the bottom of the screen. We use a software called Big Blue Button, which is an online teaching platform. And again, it's free and open source, which means we can install it on our own server. We can use it for any period of time. So Zoom, sometimes if you are using the free version of Zoom, it may allow you to use it for 40 minutes. It may allow you to use it for 1 hour. Basically, they decide the terms of use. In the case of free and open source software, since it belongs to us, since we have the full freedom to use it, we are not at all constrained by any conditions that the software may put on us. Other examples of free and open source webinar platform, we also have something called Jitsi. That is also a free and open source video conferencing platform. Okay, so let me now, I'll just show you demo of a few tools. Before I go ahead, I just want to people to tell in the chat what are the different subjects that you all teach as a part of your own work in your college? Maybe if you can just type in the chat window. I will just see the chat. Yeah, can people type what are all subjects do you teach normally?
So in the chat box, it says social work, geography, accounts and commerce,
Okay, yeah, I
English.
can see. Yes, I can see the
Yes.
chat now. English, social science.
Yes, sir.
Anybody teaching mathematics? Anybody in this group who, yeah, maths? Yeah, there is Sister Jacinta has said maths. So we look at different tools. You just forget that you are the head of institution or you're a senior faculty. Right now, you behave like your students, and let's see if you can enjoy the tools that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to first show you a tool called Geogebra, which is on my browser. So let me just change the share. Yeah, can everybody see a screen in which they can see a circle?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Anybody can tell me what is the diameter of the circle? Somebody can unmute and say. The circle, what is the diameter of the circle? You're able to see it bigger now, I'm sure. Yeah, what is the diameter of the circle?
So the response is 1.
Yeah, the response is right. So the diameter of the circle is 1. So maybe Sister Jacinta, if she can unmute and say, we learned about something called pi in school, right? Pi is something we learned of. But what is pi exactly? Can she share? What exactly we mean when we say pi? Yeah, Sister Jacinta is who I asked, but anybody can say in case she is not around. What is pi?
I
What we
was
have
not,
learned?
hello, I was not able to unmute. Now I can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Three,
What is?
the value of pi is 3.14
Yeah,
or 22 upon 7.
7. Yeah, yeah. So that's actually, if you see the chart also, many people have said that pi is 22 by 7 or 3.14. But actually that answer is, that's how I also learned in school that pi is 3.14 or 22 by 7. But actually that's not really the correct answer. That is in the sense that the concept of pi is, that's a value of pi. But when we learn in school, we don't learn concepts many a times. I'm not saying all the time. And of course, there are wonderful teachers who do not get bogged down by teaching only content. They actually teach us concept. And the concept of pi is, there is something which is the concept of pi itself. And that is something, when you discover it, you get an idea. So I'm going to just show you on the screen. So you can see this particular circle, right? So the circle diameter is 1. So what will be the value of the circumference? Or let me just show you the screen. Can you all see the animation that is evolving in front of you? So what it means is, if the diameter of a circle is 1, then if you were able to unroll the diameter, unroll the circle and measure the length of the perimeter, you would get the value of 3.14. So actually pi is nothing but the, if you can see the screen, pi is nothing but the radius ratio of the circumference to the diameter of the circle. But this is not what we learn in school. We learn pi as 22 by 7, and we simply use pi as a arithmetical measure to calculate circumference from radius or diameter by multiplying it using 22 by 7 or 3.14. But the concept of pi is simple, that in every circle, the ratio of the circumference and the diameter is constant. So if the teacher were to actually teach us by saying, draw any circle that you want, measure the diameter and measure the circumference, divide the circumference by the diameter, and what do you find? Then all the students will find that typically the value comes somewhere around 3.14. And then the fact that the circumference diameter ratio is constant and that ratio is pi is what one would learn as a concept. So did people follow me when I said, when I spoke now? Was I clear? So pi as a concept is the ratio of circumference diameter and the value approximates to 3.14. But in school, we just learned pi as 3.14 or 22/7. So this is a software called Geogebra. I'm going to show you one more Geogebra file. Let me see if the screen sharing has changed. Yeah, people are able to see a triangle now. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, people can speak. I know it's the end of a day, you're all tired, but I like my classrooms to be interactive. You know, we all suffer this online phenomena where we are sitting in one room and everybody's sitting in their own room and we don't see one another. I can see very few of you, so I'll request people to unmute and speak. I don't think, although there is a large number of participants here, 380 is a number that I can see, but nevertheless, I think we can still talk. So this is a triangle which has a number of sides as 3. And this is what we call as a regular polygon. And as the number of sides of a regular polygon increases, what do you think is likely to happen? So this is a triangle which has got 3 sides. I'm going to make it 4, which is what do you get now? You get a square, right? So when it's 3, it's a equilateral triangle. All 3 sides are equal. When you make the number of sides as 4, all sides are equal, so you get a square. So as the number of sides increases, what are you likely to get? Yeah, anybody can say again. You can guess what do you think is likely to happen when the number of sides of a regular polygon keeps increasing?
It becomes a circle, sir.
Yeah, who said that?
Maitreyi.
Maitreya. So, you know, it is one thing to say that, but the first time I saw it, for example, I'm going to actually physically show that you can see that, right? As the number of sides of regular polygon keeps increasing, it approximates a circle. So I can actually in GeoGebra, I can set an animation on and I can allow the students to enjoy the animation. So the number of values, the value for the number of sides increases and decreases. And we can see that, you know, you're going to end up approximating a circle. Now, will it become a circle? Whoever said that it'll become a circle, does it actually become a circle?
It tends to become a circle.
Yeah. So what is the concept underlying that? When we say tends to become, what exactly are we, what is the topic we are talking about?
Approaching.
Approaching, or what we call as limits, right? So limits, which is the starting point of calculus. So you can use a software like GeoGebra not only to teach a simple concept of triangle or circle, which is the, you know, basics of geometry. You can even use it to teach calculus. So we have used it. So when we say limit, as n tends towards infinity, where n is the number of sides of a circle, then we say that the result is a circle. But it's n tending towards infinity, but n will never become infinity because infinity is beyond any number that we know, and therefore it will never become a circle. But as you can see visually, very easily we can see that it's becoming more and more of a circle, right, as the number of sides increases. So this is a software called GeoGebra, and using this software we can, as you can see on the screen, we can teach different kinds of geometry. We can even look at 3-dimensional geometry, even that is available in GeoGebra. We can also teach algebra. So it's not only a geometry software. It's also, for example, every time you construct something, you will get the algebraic equivalent of that on your screen. And that is what we are able to see here. In fact, that's why its name is GeoGebra. It's a combination of geometry and algebra. Now, my organization, IT for Change, we have been conducting workshops for teachers who teach maths in high schools. And now we are going to start teaching teachers who are also teaching middle school, you know, because in middle school only you get introduced to basics of geometry, and we start looking at more complex arithmetic and, you know, beginning of algebra as well. We have been teaching them for the last 12 years or so, since 2010, when we learned this software ourselves. And it's a wonderful software. It is specifically made for teaching mathematics, and that is the beauty of it. Any questions anybody has got before you go ahead? Again, as I said, I'm only going to show you free and open source software. So GeoGebra is a free and open source software. You can download it in your computer. You can go online and access it, and you can use it. You can give it to your students, and any of you can use it. So in the work that we do with schools, we also encourage teachers to encourage students to use GeoGebra. So when students start using GeoGebra, their own maths concepts becomes very clear. Like for example, when I showed you the pi file, my own concept of what is pi became clear when I saw that particular file. Until then, I also thought pi is 22/7. And that file explained to me that pi is not 22/7, it's the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. Any questions anybody has got? I'll go to the next tool. I'm just showing you a few software tools. I'll show you one from science. But before that, if anybody has any questions. Yeah. Can anybody speak anything, any question connected to what I showed so far on mathematics?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, not regarding this GeoGebra. All these free softwares are supported by this MS Word and its versions.
Yeah, good question. Actually, this is an alternative to MS itself. See, Microsoft is proprietary. So as I already explained, there are two kinds of software. Proprietary software, you're not the owner of the software. So even if your college has paid a lot of money to the software, to the computer manufacturer, to a computer supplier, and you have got the CDs of Microsoft, Microsoft is proprietary. What it means is, although you are using the software, Microsoft only gives you a license to use. So in the case of proprietary, you have only the license to use the software. The software belongs to them, which is why you cannot give it to others. You cannot make copies. You cannot install it on other systems. Now, instead of using proprietary software, at IT for Change, we use only free and open source software. So we don't use Windows. You can see my system, right? I'm using a software called Linux. So you might have heard of the term Linux. Linux is an operating system, and like somebody said on the chat, Linux is a very secure system. You won't get viruses in it. You don't need antivirus software. And we have installed Linux in hundreds of computer systems, thousands of computer systems over the last 10 years. So Kerala, for example, fully uses only Linux system in all the schools and colleges. They don't use Windows at all. So instead of MS Office, I use something called LibreOffice. So instead of MS Word, I have something called LibreOffice Writer. You saw my slides, which I was showing you. They are made using a software called LibreOffice Impress, which is the same as Microsoft PowerPoint. So instead of MS Windows, instead of MS Office, you can use Linux and LibreOffice. And in addition to that, you can use all these free educational tools. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes,
and
sir.
it's the same. Finally, it is the same. It's like I always give the example of car. You may be using Maruti, Suzuki cars. You may have bought an Alto, or you may be having a, Swift, or you may be having a Wagoner, and then you change to Hyundai. Now, finally, whether it's a Santro or a Wagoner, the purpose is the same. You drive from one place to another. So same way, Linux also or Windows, the purpose is the same. It's an operating system. You can store files on the computer. You can print files. You can use email. You can use different software applications. So Windows and Linux do the same job. Microsoft Office and LibreOffice do the same job. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Connected with that. So in case of we have taken the license of MS Word or MS 98. So we can shift it from that operating system to Linux.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can shift from that, and also you can also do double install. So what we do, sometimes somebody has got Windows and they don't want to remove that Windows. So on the same computer, you can have what we call as a dual boot. So we install Linux on that same system. So when you boot the system, you can choose Linux or you can choose Windows. If you choose Linux, you will get this software. Can everybody see a globe in front of them?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a software tool for social sciences. Atlases for geography teaching, it's a wonderful tool. So always we teach, when we look at the globe in the classroom, even if you got a physical globe, the globe will always have north as up, right? Now, is this correct? Can I make this map like this? People can see what I'm doing to the map, right? Is this correct to have a map like this? Australia is above. Can you see that? Is this a map of the world, or is it not a map of the world? Again, social science teachers, faculty, is this correct as a globe or not correct? Any social science, any geography teacher, please, or anybody. I mean, these are all high school topics only I'm looking at. So you're on mute, Ramya, Professor Ramya.
It's a North Pole down, actually.
Yeah, North Pole is down. So is this correct or is it wrong?
Not correct.
Not correct. What does Professor Ramya feel? You're mute. Your mic is mute, so we can't hear you, Professor Ramya. Somebody is saying correct, somebody is saying wrong, right? So again, see, just like this is the interesting thing about this software.
Correct only, sir.
Yeah, correct only. You know, what is the fascinating thing about this software is this software actually teaches us conceptually correct things. Like, for example, in Geogebra, I showed you how we don't understand the concept of pi. We just memorize a number, and that is not mathematics. Even our previous speaker was clearly telling, no, that the purpose of education is conceptual understanding. We may go to IIT, we may go to medical college by mugging up all the knowledge, but what is the use? We are a failure in life. We may be a doctor or engineer, but we are not educated. We are simply good in mugging. Our brain can memorize hundreds of things. We write exams and pass. That I don't think is the purpose of education. And whoever thinks they have succeeded by becoming a doctor or an engineer, they can have their opinion, but conceptual understanding is very powerful and the software allows you to do that. So here also, if you see, one of the misconceptions of having the globe with only the north as up is students confuse north and up. So they will have the doubt, why don't I fall down, right? If you ask some student, they may have the doubt that why am I not falling from the edge of the earth into the, where will I fall? And if you see the Hindu, you know, some of these Rama and Mahabharata, many of you would have seen, whenever they show the gods are showering flowers, they'll be showing Brahma and Vishnu looking down, which is a very atrocious concept, right? Because there is no question of heaven is up, earth is down. So they show Brahma and Vishnu are looking down at the earth, but you cannot look down at the earth. Everything is above only, right? Because you are on the earth as an insignificant being. The moon is also up, the sun is also above you. Nothing which is below you, you cannot see it. So this actually tells the student that north and south are not up and down. North and south are two directions like east and west. So this is as much a valid way of representing the globe as you can the normal way. But normal globe, you will not remove it and do fix upside down. But here I can easily do that, right? Now, what is this a map of? What I'm showing you a part of the globe. If I have to describe, if I have to ask you, give me this map in one phrase or one word, what will you say? It's a map of what? It's a map of the earth. That's fine. But anything more finite than that, you can say? This thing, this map that I'm showing you is a map of what? Anybody? Professor Ramya, you want to try?
North Pole.
Is it only the North Pole?
Europe.
Is it the northern hemisphere?
Yeah, that is right. So
Okay.
see, it is actually the northern hemisphere. Now, when we do the globe, a physical globe, we can't do these kind of things, right? So this is the map of a northern hemisphere. And same way we can say, this will be the map of the southern hemisphere, right? What is something, can you notice something very different between the two hemispheres? Can anybody say this is a south hemisphere? Take a minute to look at it. And this is a north hemisphere, okay? Or before this question you answer, I'm going to ask you one more question. This is a map actually of the earth in December. So that's why the blue color is cold. You can see that North Pole is very cold, right? In the equator, it's a little bit warm and southern hemisphere is hot, right? Australia is summer, am I right? So when you tell the children that this is a tilt, why does this happen? That summer in December, north hemisphere is cold. You can see the blue patch and south hemisphere is hot, which is a red patch. But if I look at July, can you see it's reverse? North hemisphere is hot and south hemisphere is cold, correct? Now I'm going to ask you a complicated question. Sorry, I'm asking lots of questions, but this is a fun, geography otherwise tends to be, I'll request pardon from all the geography teachers on this group, but generally students think geography is one of the most boring subjects in the school. But geography can be fun if the students are challenged with thinking about various things which they just memorize, right? So for example, this is a map in December. You take north is blue and south is also blue, but very less blue, right? And you take the map in July, southern hemisphere is much colder, northern hemisphere is much less colder. But my question is, in December, you see the north hemisphere is much more blue. But in July, the southern hemisphere is not so blue. What could be the reason? Is my question clear? In December, in July, which is winter in the southern hemisphere, you can see there is blue in the southern hemisphere, correct? But, and of course, north hemisphere is not at all blue because ice cap, everything has melted in the summer. But if you take the ulta, in December, north is having so much more blue and south is not having much red. What can be the reason for that?
Southern hemisphere, there will be summer that time. It will be tilted towards the sun.
That is true, but my question is a more complicated question. My question is
More
a relative.
more land and
that's
more
right.
water.
That's right. That's right. Now you see, Professor Ramya, this is actually a concept of science, right? In the science, we learn that solids heat faster and cool faster, and liquids heat slower and cool slower. We learn it in science, correct? But the impact of science in social science, we are seeing that southern hemisphere is more equivalent weather because summer is also not very hot. You see summer in the northern hemisphere, it's really, we are in a terrible situation. See the summer, how hot it is. See the equator, not the equator, the desert areas. Southern hemisphere is not very cold. And likewise, in winter, it is not very hot. Whereas north hemisphere becomes very cold. So Ramya madam gave the correct answer that northern hemisphere, because it is mostly land. And you can see this in this map, right? You got North America, you got Europe, you got Asia. You got all those continents in the north. In the southern hemisphere, you simply have small part of Africa, small part of South America, and Australia. That's all. So it's largely, if you see this map, it is like 70-80% water, correct? In fact, 70% of, I think, Earth is water. So southern hemisphere maybe 90% water, which is why the temperature differences are very different between north and south. Now, because it is digital, I can move it around. I can also increase the size. See, I can start zooming. Can you see that now? I'm zooming and I want to see rainfall. For example, I want to see a rainfall map. Can you see the rainfall map? What is very unique? What is very striking about this rainfall map of India? Can anybody tell me what is striking about this rainfall map of India? This is rainfall during July, which is actually maybe. Yeah, I can't hear.
It covers the entire country except Tamil Nadu part of.
Some part of Tamil Nadu, not so much Tamil Nadu. See, this whole thing is not Tamil Nadu. No, it will also be Maharashtra, I think, from top to bottom, right? So it's covering not some part of Tamil Nadu, but what is the reason? The blue color suggests extent of rainfall. So you can see that there is very heavy rainfall, below Burma, and there's very heavy rainfall in the Arabian Sea and the coastal India, but very less rainfall behind that. What could be the reason?
The mountain cover.
Yeah, that's right. We talk about the Nilgiris, right? The Western Ghats. So can you see what is the big effect of Western Ghats on the entire part of the country? There is no rain at all in July in so much part of the country, which is exactly the shadow of the Nilgiris. Whereas to the west of the Nilgiris, the rainfall is extremely high. So because it is a digital map, I can, I can rotate, revolve, I can do all that, and I can show students. Students can play with it and try to get an understanding of the Earth. So this is a software called Marble, which is a digital atlas. Okay, I'm going to show you any questions. I'm going to show you one software for science, and then we'll go back to the presentation. Any questions? Any questions, please? There are no questions. What can you all see now? Hello. Can my students speak, please? I'm tired of being the only person talking.
Pendulum.
Yeah. Now, this is a science experiment. There's a wonderful software called FET. And there are hundreds and thousands of experiments in this software. So I'm going to just show you one software. So let's say I'm moving the pendulum, right? Now, the variable in this pendulum is the time it takes to complete one cycle, right? So you can see that it is going back and forth and coming back to the original position. That is a cycle time. Now, what are the factors that will influence the cycle time? Do you think, what are the factors? Can anybody say what will influence the time it takes to move from, come back to the same point?
Length of the string.
Length of the pendulum, length of the string.
Yeah, length of the pendulum, length of the string. So so in this experiment, we can confirm that. So somebody is saying length, so you can all see length, right? So let me reduce the length. What happens? The speed has increased, right?
Yes.
And when I increase the length, the speed has reduced. So the increase in length reduces increases the time for completing one swing. So of course we can do this physically. Nothing stops us from actually tying a ball to a thread and doing a pendulum, but this has more than that. So length is one. Anything else?
Gravitational force.
Yeah, now gravitational force you cannot change in the classroom, right? But let us see what happens if I increase the gravity. Can you see what happens? So if I increase gravity, the speed increases. If I reduce gravity and make it 0, then what happens? The pendulum actually starts going round and round because there is no gravity. I have made 0 gravity. So if you're in a place where there is 0 gravity, then the pendulum will not move side to side, actually move full cycle, except also because I've taken friction as 0. But if I increase the friction, then you will find that the movement, the friction, there was 0 friction earlier. Again, you can't do a 0 friction in a real life environment. Now you can ask the students, what are the other factors that will influence the, is it the weight of the
weight can be
weight? Yeah, actually weight is because gravity. But if you take mass, I've increased the mass now. Has it changed? Or I've reduced the mass a lot? I'm making the mass 0.1.
Friction and air resistance all affect this
Yeah,
thing,
friction
right?
friction means air resistance. That is right. Friction, air resistance. Same way, gravity is a kind of friction, right? Because it is attracting the pendulum towards itself. But weight is correct, but mass is wrong. We all know weight is a derived quantity, right? Weight is derived from mass and function of gravity. So mass itself is not a factor. So you can put a 1 kilo or a 5 kilo. The mass itself will not be a factor in the actual. See, I've increased the weight now and I've reduced the weight, but that doesn't affect the actual movement of the pendulum. So this is one experiment of a pendulum. You can put 2 pendulums if you want, and you can move both the pendulums, alter the factors and see what is the impact of the movement of the pendulum. So this is one of the experiments from a software called PhET. There are thousands of experiments to do with all the topics in physics and chemistry, and even some in biology. You can actually use the software for that. And the fun of this software is students can start playing with the software and trying to learn on their own. Like Geogebra also, students can play with it. Marble, students can play with it. So the teacher can show some of these applications in the classroom on the projection. And then if you have a computer lab in your school or in your college, you can put these software applications for, it's like a lab, right? So the computer lab students can actually go and play on that software. Yeah, so these are 3 tools that I wanted to demo, and then I'll go back to my presentation. But if there are any questions now, I can take them. Yeah, any questions? So
there is a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Where do we get this GeoGebra software?
Yeah, so there are 2 ways of getting GeoGebra. What we do is, as I said, in IT for Change, we conduct programs, and we have the entire, not only GeoGebra, we have all the software applications in one place. So I'm just going to give you the URL of that, and this slide also I can share. Yeah, can you see on the slide? There is a whole operating system itself that we have created, which is, we call it Kalpavriksha. Kalpavriksha, of course, means that anything is Kalpavriksha means bounty, right? Anything you want, you can get from it. So we call the software as Kalpavriksha, which is nothing but the Ubuntu operating system with GeoGebra, with PhET, with Marble, with Calcium, and with several software applications, with Freeplane, all of them put together. And you can see the URL on the screen, right? karnatakaeducationorg.in COER. This slides I will share with the college, so they can send it to you by mail also. So if you click on this link, you can download this entire software and you can install it on a computer, and all these tools will be available for you also.
So can it be accessed by other states too?
Yes, this is free and open source. The whole world can access it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you can also access it online. So these are the, if you want to access it online also, it's available. So I'm just going to show you some links for that. So for example, Geogebra, there is a website called geogebra.org. You can see that on the screen, right? So geogebra.org, if you go to, then you can access and use Geogebra on that. FET is also available online, fet.colorado.edu. So these are the software applications. I'll request my colleague Anand, who's also in this call, to type these links onto the chat window. Okay. So let me go back to my presentation and yeah. So I showed you GeoGebra, which is for teaching geometry and algebra. I showed you Marble for teaching Earth, which is basically, see, even things like latitudes, longitudes, and all. There are some very interesting ways you can teach latitudes and longitudes in high school to students, which otherwise conceptually it's very difficult to understand. And Calcium is a tool for soft chemistry, atomic model. You can do chemical molecular balancing and things like that. Stellarium is a software which converts your computer into a planetarium. Now, we know that there are not too many planetariums in India. I'm in Bangalore. We have a planetarium in Bangalore. I know there is a planetarium in Bombay. Maybe there will be a planetarium in the state capital, but your own institution may not be in the state capital. It may be in another town. It may be in Pune, or it may be in Mysore, and you'll find that you don't have a planetarium in these towns. So Stellarium software actually converts your computer into a planetarium. I'm just going to show a short video which will show how Stellarium can actually be used to teach different concepts of physics. So just give me a minute. Yeah, can you all see a video? I'm just going to play the video. Maybe the audio may not be very clear to you, but let's see. But there are subtitles.
ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಆಗೋದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮೊದಲು ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ವಿಡಿಯೋಸ್ ತೋರಿಸೋದು, ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಶೋ ತೋರಿಸೋದು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ STF ಹೋಗಿ ಬಂದ ನಂತರ ನಾನು ಸಿಮ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ ನ ಕೂಡ ಅಡಾಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸಿಮ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತು ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಖಂಡಿತ ಮಕ್ಕಳಲ್ಲಿ ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡಿ ಕಲಿ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಹತ್ತತ್ರ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾನು ಮಾಡಿ ಕಲಿತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ್ಕಲ್ಲ, ಹತ್ತತ್ರ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ.
ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಫೋರಂ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಗಣಿತ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕಿಯಾಗಿ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಜಿಯೋಜಿಬ್ರಾ ಅನ್ನುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಎಜುಕೇಶನಲ್ ಟೂಲ್ ನ ಪರಿಚಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ರು. ಅದೇ ತರಬೇತಿ ನಮಗೆ ನೀಡೋದನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ತರಬೇತಿಯಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಕೊಟ್ವಿ ಬೇರೆ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್. ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಜಿಯೋಜಿಬ್ರಾ 90 ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ಆಂಗಲ್ ಇವಾಗ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನನ್ನ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ ಫುಲ್ ಜಾಮಿಟ್ರಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಆಲ್ಜಿಬ್ರಾವನ್ನ ಕಂಬೈನ್ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಕೆಲವು ಸಲ ನಾವು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಜಾಮಿಟ್ರಿ ಬೇರೆ, ಆಲ್ಜಿಬ್ರಾನೇ ಬೇರೆ, ಅರ್ಥಮೆಟಿಕ್ ಬೇರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದೇ ಅಂತ ಬರೀ ಹಾಗೆ ಹೇಳೋದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ನಾವು ಈ ಟೂಲ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಚಿತ್ರಣದ ಮುಖಾಂತರನೇನೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಆನಿಮೇಷನ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇಂದಾನೆ ತೋರಿಸೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಬರೀ ಅದು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಅಟ್ರಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅವರಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಪರಿಕಲ್ಪನೆಯನ್ನ ಇನ್ನೂ ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಟೂಲ್ ನ ಸಹಾಯದಿಂದ ನನಗೇನ್ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಆ ಸೂತ್ರಗಳು ಹೇಗ್ ಬಂತು ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಆ ಸೂತ್ರವನ್ನ ಬಹಾಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರ ಬದಲು ಅವ್ರು ಅದ್ ಹೇಗ್ ಬಂತು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವರು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
Yeah, so that was 3 software applications. I already showed you GeoGebra and FIT, and that was Stellarium. Stellarium actually for topics like eclipses, lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, any topic that involves the Milky Way galaxy or any galactic object, comets and all, you can actually show using that software. So let me go back to my slides. One second. Yeah, you're all able to see the slides now. Yeah, you can see the slides on the software applications.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so these are all the applications that are for education, and then there are some generic applications also which is there in the same software distribution. So normally we use MS Word, but as a teacher you should not only be able to write a lesson, you should also be able to use a graphic, make an animation, try to create a simulation, do an audio video recording, do multimedia presentations, or record a, let's say you're a biology teacher in a BSc program. You should be able to take a short video on your phone. Now everybody has a computer in their hand, which is their mobile phone. You can take a nice video on your phone. Then you might want to provide some additional text, subtitles. You may want to provide some voiceover. You can do all that using the software Kdenlive. So you can see that there is a software called Kdenlive. There's a software called Record My Desktop. So you can create your own videos using this software. So variety of free and open source text editor, image editor, audio, animation, mind maps, video, all that you can do. So you can see this thing called Gravitation on the right side, top right. That's a concept mapping software. And concept mapping software can be used by all subjects. So whereas, a subject like sociology, you may not really have software to teach sociology, but concept maps can be used in sociology and every subject to actually make out the family of concepts. So if you can see the map on the slide, it's for the concept gravity. Similarly, you can take a sociology concept called family or religion, or nation, and then actually map the concepts connected to religion or family on that concept map. So that will help the students understand the complexity of the ideas that you're trying to teach in a subject like sociology. Okay, so yeah, so some demos I've already done. GeoGebra, FIT, Marble. We saw Stellarium also. FreePlane is a concept mapping software that I talked to you about. And as you can see on the slide here, all these free and open source applications, because it belongs to us. Again and again, I want to stress that when you take this software, it belongs to you. It doesn't belong to IT for Change. You can make copies of it. You can install it on all your college labs. You can give it to your students to install it in their own computers. It's completely ours. It belongs to us. So we can also make it available in our own languages. So normally software that we use will be only in English. Now, many higher education institutions I know will be teaching only in the English medium. But let's say you are having some programs in local languages also. And I know that in Karnataka, for example, many students do their BA in Kannada medium. And I think now more and more, one of the things that NEP 20 is saying is even science should be taught in local languages. So this is GeoGebra in Tamil. You can see that, right? So we created the Kannada interface for GeoGebra. You can create all these software applications in any language that you want. So that is also up to you. It doesn't have to be only in English. Yeah. So one of the things that we can do using free and open source software is to create material. Now, again, if this material has to be shared by everybody, normally when you create a lesson or you are buying a book, you know that it's copyright, right? Copyright means you cannot give it to others, you cannot share it, you cannot Xerox it, you cannot do anything because again, you only have a license to use the book yourself. You cannot give it to others. So when we create content, we have to create content under license called open education resource. So you can see this term on the screen here, OER. Just like you have free and open source software, if you want to make the content that you create free and open, you have to license it as OER or open education resource. Once you create a content as open education resource, you can share it with others. They can modify it and they can give it to others also. So that is called OER, and the licensing for that is called Creative Commons. So I think that will be there in my next slide. Yeah. So there is a copyright licensing called Creative Commons (CC). So normal copyright means anything that you create, you cannot, other people cannot use it. So even though, let's say you made a lesson and you emailed it to somebody, legally they are not allowed to use it, because that's a law of the country that only the creator can use the created content. That's a law of the land. But if you want other people to use it, and as teachers you want to create content that other people will use, you have to license it under what is called as Creative Commons licensing, which simply means when you make a material, you're typing something in a document, in the end you just say copyright CC by SA or copyright Creative Commons. The minute you do that, that material becomes available for everybody to use. So this is an important thing that we need to understand, that whenever a teacher creates content, they should license it as CC by SA. CC by SA means CC is Creative Commons, which means it belongs to everybody. By means I just want credit for my creation. The fact that I created it, I want it attributed to me. That is the meaning of by. SA share alike means if somebody makes a change to it, they should also release it as open education resource. So just remember this concept OER. Every time you create some material, please release it as OER. And this slide explains the technical steps for making a particular content as OER by giving the license, copyright license of it as CC. Okay, now all this, what is it connected to education? So I'll come back to the main point, which is whatever I was talking about in terms of software, is their software is free of cost, you can give it to everybody, that's all very fine. But for a teacher, that is not the primary purpose. A teacher wants to make her lessons interesting for children. A teacher wants to be creative. A teacher wants to encourage students to be curious and creative. So as I explained, as I showed you in my demos, this free and open source software, what it does is, it allows students to explore different subjects by themselves. Teachers can also teach it using these particular software applications. I'm not talking theory, because we have worked with totally maybe 25,000 teachers in different schools in India. We are also working in colleges, but we work mostly with the B.Ed student teachers. So we have not done too much work in BSc and BA, but many of the tools that we're talking about are relevant to even colleges. And what we have seen happen is, when the teacher, typically, many teachers adopt a chalk and talk method. They'll be standing on the stage and they'll be talking to the students in the lecture mode. That is not wrong. I'm not telling lecture mode is wrong, but instead of relying only on the lecture method, sometimes if you do a demonstration, sometimes in science, if you show a simulation like I showed on FET, sometimes you're allowing the students to create concept maps by themselves on a particular topic, you'll find that the classroom becomes much more interactive. So these digital technologies, one important thing they do is, they do not allow the teacher to have only a chalk and talk method. They make the teacher to become creative in the way of teaching. When the teacher becomes creative, it is also an encouragement to the student to become more creative in the way they teach. And the teachers can make the material and share with others. So when I showed you the Geogebra file, you can save it as a file, you can send it to somebody else. So we have a website, which I actually showed you some time back. In that website, all the creations of the teachers are made available there. So Geogebra files, if you go to geogebra.org, you will find thousands of Geogebra files on any topic. So these topics are available for everybody for sharing with others also. So these educational tools allow teachers to become creative, curious. They can make many resources, and instead of having only a textbook, even a subject like sociology, a sociology teacher might think that there are these books that she has got for teaching sociology, but you can ask the students to enact a play. You can record that play on your own phone or a camera, and then you can make video edit it to make a a kind of a movie. So a video document can be made by a sociology teacher, which can powerfully express a particular concept. Or you might find some video online, but you may find that the English is not comprehensible to your students. You can download that video, if provided it is open resource, and you can dub it in your own language. So that is also something that the free and open source video editing software allows you to do. You can dub anything in your own language. So even if a teacher who's teaching sociology, or a teacher who's teaching maths or science, or any of the other subjects that you're teaching in college. So somebody said they're teaching accounting. So in our office, we use a free and open source accounting tool. Everybody thinks accounts means you have to use Tally, but we don't use Tally. We use a software called Front Accounting. So if your students want to actually practice, accounting entries in the computer system, you can install Front Accounting on your computers in your college lab, and students can practice on their own. You don't need to pay license fees to Tally. You are not at the mercy of Tally. You can use Front Accounting instead. So across subjects, you find that there are software applications for use in teaching as well as for making materials. And most importantly, students in the lab can practice with them. So basically, this is what I wanted to share in my session. Maybe if there are 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I can take questions if there are any questions.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative and interactive session. Now the floor is now open for discussions. Father Varghese.
Yes, excuse me. One clarification, one request. So will you available for any training online or offline, sir?
Yeah, we in fact usually when we have a session like this, there is always yeah, can I reply? I didn't hear the second person, but yes, we conduct programs for colleges. In fact, usually after this session that Kristu Jayanti, 1 or 2 institutions do contact us, and we can organize a program for interested institutions. It can be online or offline. So we are in Bangalore. Last time we did an online program for some schools from Visakhapatnam. So in that way, online and offline both are possible. Offline, of course, will be easier for teachers to learn, but online is also possible to do. We have been doing a lot of online courses for teachers and teacher educators across the country over the last 2 years. Until the pandemic started, most of our work was only in workshops. But during the pandemic, we have developed abilities to run online courses also. So my mail ID is guru@itforchange.net. I'll request Anand sir to type it into the chat window. You can mail me if you have any requirements or queries for conducting training programs. We can do it for you. We will not do the training programs free of cost, but we are a non-profit organization. So we are not a commercial organization. We'll have some nominal charges that we would like you to pay, more as a contribution to recognize our time, effort, and resources. And then the software itself is free and open source, so you can install it and you can use it, and your teachers can learn and use it.
If there are any more questions, please unmute and ask, or you can put your questions in the chat box.
Okay, one more thing I want to say until maybe people ask questions is not only it's a question of cost. For proprietary software you have to pay, but more bigger challenge for proprietary software today is that it is a spy. So any proprietary platform that you're using, any of Google products, Facebook, or any of the social media platforms, or any of the other software applications that may be available online, if it is proprietary, it means that they may be collecting your data. And when they collect your data, they can not only use it for commercial purposes, but also for surveillance. And more younger people in colleges and schools, because of COVID, unfortunately, they're subject to surveillance by these companies. Byju's, for example, will collect data whenever you log into their platform, and they will use it for selling products to you, and they will give the data to other companies also for making sales to your children. So children will become more and more susceptible and vulnerable to surveillance and commercial exploitation by proprietary software companies. That is a very important reason for us to shift from proprietary to free software, Swatantra software. Proprietary also nowadays mostly is free only. We don't pay money for Gmail. We don't pay money to Facebook. We don't pay money to Twitter. We don't pay money to Instagram. They're all free of cost, but they collect our data and they misuse it. Whereas Azad software, that misuse is avoided. And institutions that are education institutions have to take even more care about this, because young people who are there in your institutions are vulnerable to data hacking by proprietary vendors. So that is something to be careful about, which is independent of the cost aspect.
Is there any How to identify this, sir? Any techniques to identify this proprietary and first?
Yeah, so proprietary, the license of the software is the way to identify. So all the free and open source software, the license will be such that they will allow you to install the software on your own system. So either you can install it in your own computer, or you can install it on your on your own server of your college. So if the software is allowed to be freely installed by you, that is free and open source. If the software is not allowed, they don't have an installation option that you can install it on your own, that means it is proprietary. That is the difference between proprietary and free and open. Free and open source software will be having the license called GPL. I'm just typing that in the chat. So whenever some software says the license is GPL, that is called the general public license. So that is called a free and open source software. Search engine DuckDuckGo. I'm using the search engine called DuckDuckGo. I don't use Google search because Google search takes your data and can misuse it. I use a software called duckduckgo.com. So this is the search engine I use, duckduckgo.com. So when you use this software, this particular search engine is free and open source, it will not collect your data. It will not misuse your data. And similarly, instead of Firefox, instead of Chrome browser, I use a browser Firefox. Firefox is open source browser. So on all the applications at my organization, IT for Change, we use free and open source applications only, whether it is an operating system or an office or any of these browser, any of these accounting system, everything we use free and open source only. Project management, leave system. Even institutional software is also available. It's called Fedena. There is a software called Fedena, which is for institution itself, student register, fee collection, all that is there in Fedena software. In Kerala, government schools, they use Fedena software only. For every government school has a software for the student management, student register, student attendance, fee collection, whatever they do, they use free and open source software Fedena in Kerala. Kerala as a leader, other states also have to do that. Marble is not opening. Where are you trying to open Marble, madam? You installed Marble on your computer?
Yes, I've installed this in my computer, but it is not opening like it was in yours. So
what is it saying? It's giving you a message.
It is showing just a map, just the world map and Marble. Yes. And
you can
find just showing find your way, and the Marble find your way and explore the world, and desktop version is there.
Desktop you have to install. Yeah, you have to install the desktop version. Yeah.
So view details is there in Linux, Mac, and Windows.
So I showed you on Linux. I showed you Marble on the Linux system.
Linux, okay.
Yeah. So there is I'll request Anand sir that learn Marble page will be there. Anand sir, can you just put that? There is we have a user manual for all the software applications, Geogebra, everything. So Marble also, if you see the user manual, you will get the installation instruction and all. Anand sir has already shared that. So if you visit that page, it will give you installation instructions and all. I think WPS is also proprietary software only. It is again free of cost, but WPS is a proprietary software because it is not, you cannot install it freely. You can only use it. So instead of WPS, we will recommend that everybody uses this LibreOffice. We are using LibreOffice in our office. It is a very popular system. LibreOffice is used by maybe more than 200-300 crore people in the world. 200-300 crore. So it is a very large user base. And instead of MS Office, we can use LibreOffice.
So, but does it has the provision to type equations and all for mathematics?
It is actually wonderful. There is a software in LibreOffice. There is something called LibreMath, which is very good. You can do anything and everything in LibreMath. So I didn't show it to you today.
Okay,
but
sir.
LibreMath has got sets. You can do sets, integration, calculus, all the arithmetical signs, exponential, index, everything you can do in that. Square root, everything is possible in LibreMath. LibreMath is a part of LibreOffice. You can type your mathematics question paper very easily in that.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else anybody has got? You all must be tired. It's the end of a day. End of a long day. So, yeah.
The chat box is overflowing with questions and enthusiastic.
Any software for English language? Yeah, English language. What we do for English language, there are software for English language also. Free and open source, what we recommend particularly, I don't know about higher education, but for, for young children to learn language, there is this audio resource creation, audio editor called Audacity. So I'll request Anand sir to just type that in. Audacity is audio editing software. You can record, we encourage teachers to record poems and set it to music. So if you're teaching in college and you have some nice poems, you can actually set it to music in your own voice. You can do, all kinds of voice modulation and all, and you can encourage your students also to do that. There is video editing software. So language, I think probably mostly in the free and open source world, we have the audio and the video editing software. Of course, spell check and all. LibreOffice has spell check. So people want to correct their spelling and grammar and all that. LibreOffice will have that, just like MS Office has that. So those kind of grammar spelling things are inbuilt in LibreOffice, but audio and video editing software are good for English teaching. That was from Rajini madam. Yeah. Anybody else has got any questions?
So because of time constraint, I think we need to wind up the session. So knowledge is meant to be shared. Thank you, sir, for such an informative and interactive session, and for sharing the free and open source education softwares with us, and also for the demo sessions as well. We have definitely been enriched by your in-depth knowledge in the field. Thank you, sir. I also thank Mr. Anand Desai, the colleague of Mr. Gurumurthy, for sharing the links and other information with delegates in the chat box. Your presence today is very valuable, sir. Thank you a lot. I also thank the delegates for your enthusiastic participation throughout the session. And an announcement before we wind up. If there are participants in this meeting who haven't yet registered for this event, you may please register by accessing the link shared in the chat box. The next technical session will be conducted tomorrow at 5 p.m. I request all the delegates to log in using the same Zoom credentials for yet another informative session. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thank you, delegates.
Thank you very much, madam, and thank you all of you.
Shall we wind up now?
Can we take a group photograph? If they are able to open the videos, then we can take a group photo, then we can end today's session.
Yes. Ms. Rami, ma'am? It's done. Okay, thank you all. Thank you a lot. Admin, we can end the meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.